So we set for ourselves a theme this month called Thrive. And Thrive is an acronym for thankful, happy, resilient, inspired, vivacious, and enthusiastic. I know. Amen. Hallelujah. So let me ask you this. If you were thankful, happy, resilient, inspired, vivacious, and enthusiastic more of the time, what do you think might be possible? All of it. The whole enchilada, as they say. So we want to look today at happy. It's just a coincidence, coinky-dink, that it happens to fall on my birthday. So, but it seemed natural, right, that we would be happy. I'm happy. Yes, I'm 57 years old, in case you're keeping track at home. So young, and yes, so good looking, but that is... So I just want to do full disclosure. What's great about getting old is that you have a wisdom and appreciation for life. What's also interesting to me is I feel better at 57 than I did at 47. So life is good. It's a good thing. Was it Mark Twain that said, unfortunately, youth is wasted on the young? So when we get to a certain maturity level, we appreciate the beauty and the wisdom of life. So I love to talk about this idea about happiness. One of the great principles of our country is based upon this idea that we have a right to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There is no guarantee for happiness. It turns out that you have to figure it out on your own. And so I want to talk about that today. William James, the great psychologist, said it this way. He said, the greatest discovery of any generation is that a human can alter his life by altering his attitude. Now he's saying the greatest invention, bigger than the cell phone. I know, we're going to have to negotiate that, but I'm just saying, he said, greatest discovery of any generation is that a human can alter their life by altering their attitude. It is fundamental to this whole teaching to understand that we get to determine our experience of life. Most of us were not raised in that mindset. Abe Lincoln, who knew a few things about a lot of things, said, most people are as happy as they make up their minds to be. Most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And so it's an interesting thing. Now, I want you to know I am no stranger to depression. I have spent many days and many nights in deep, dark places. So I don't take lightly this topic. I'm not a science-a-minder that says you must be happy, peppy people all the time. That just doesn't seem right to me. There's a cycle to all of life. But what I do know is there is a general tendency for the fulfillment of our soul. And that's what I want to talk about today. What does it mean? How do we get there? I was blessed in my earlier years, my first career. I have about 47 of them, but the first one I was in the restaurant business. We started at about 15 and a half years old, cleaning behind the bar and cleaning toilets. That was my grand beginning. And so many years later, I was about 47, and the big conference up in Sun Valley was going on, and I had a friend who managed all that and asked me if I'd come to work for them and do some things. And so I found myself cleaning toilets. And it's like, gosh, look at how my life has progressed. But now I'm cleaning toilets for millionaires and billionaires, so clearly life has improved for me. But I moved in, I did all kinds of things. I waited tables, and I was a bartender. I ran restaurants. I did that whole thing, did catering, the whole deal, which was actually, as it turns out, great training for this career. But one of the things I learned early on, a great lesson I learned early on, is that most people go out to have a good time. However, there are those few who go out to have a bad time. Those of you who've worked in restaurants know what I'm talking about, right? And they show up and they are determined that something's going to go wrong. Now, what's fascinating as I watched this over the years was typically, if something was going to go wrong in the restaurant that night, guess whose table it would happen on? And thereby, their wish got to be fulfilled, and they could prove themselves right and have a rotten time. But the wisdom that came to me early was that most people do go out to have a good time. There are those that go out to have a bad time. Who am I to stop them? Right? You want to have a bad time? Have at it. Right? So some part of me had a little gem of wisdom because I realized that I was not going to change people's experience. Now, had I learned that in other areas of my life as well, who knows where I'd be today. Because you see, many of us are living condition-based lives. Many of us are experiencing life in such a way that we think that our happiness is dependent upon the conditions of our life changing. We say things like, when I get this job, boy, I'm going to be happy. Or when I create this wonderful, loving, supportive relationship, then bliss. Right? Because we all know the rules of life. And the rules of life are very simple. They were taught very early to us. It was very helpful information to know, especially you women, this was really helpful for you, to know that someday some Prince Charming would come along, that he would kiss you and you would awaken. You would have an awakening, and you would then live. My question is always, how's that working out for you? Right? We are given this message over and over and over that says, boy, when all the conditions of our lives line up and everything's wonderful, then we'll be happy. But you see, that's not what Williams James was telling us. He's saying by altering our attitude, we alter our experience. You know, I'm a big fan of Ken Keyes, and many of you have read some of his work. He wrote a book on relationship, one of the first books that just opened my mind. And he was talking about this idea about how to do conscious relationship. Well, that in itself was a foreign territory, you know, conscious? Like in the relationship, you're saying? You know? Okay, I'll work with it, you know? But how do you do that? One of his first principles is this. He says, falling in love with someone is no reason to be in relationship with them. I was like, huh. Right? It's a nice starting point, but as we all know, it's only a starting point. If we don't figure out how to get conscious in the midst of relationship, then we operate from this other thing that says, you, my dear beloved, are responsible for my happiness and joy. Let me set for you the conditions of surrender. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? I'm right? But he's saying, no. If we want to experience true, loving, joyous experience of relationship and in truth of life, we've got to learn some new skills and we've got to learn some new tools. And he says, what we want to do is we want to learn to up-level our addictions to preferences. Huh? That's what he said. So, he said, what we want to do is to learn to up-level our addictions to preferences. So let's talk about addiction for a moment, shall we? Addiction is, in its simplest form, that thing that we continue to do well after we know that it's not good for us. Some of you in this room know people that do that. Right? You know those people. This will be helpful information when you go home to try and fix them. I was joking, when I used to smoke, I'd sit out and have a cigarette, and of course, well-meaning people would always come up to me and say, "Don't you know that's not good for you?" And I'd say, being me, of course, I'd say, "No. Why didn't anyone tell me this? How long have you known?" Right? But you know what? I smoked anyways. Why? I was addicted. Don't just call it what it was. I was addicted to nicotine. So, the way I got beyond that was to become unaddicted to nicotine. Now, I've often said, 18 years later, I still have the feeling I'm only one cigarette away from being a smoker again. So I just don't do it, But you see, so you say, well, shame on you, Marty, right? But the truth is, if we look at addiction, whether it's alcoholism in its full-blown form, or whether it's food, or whether it's shopping, or whether it's gambling, or whatever are the many ways that we can allow ourselves to be addicted, the essence of it is this. We continue to do things that aren't good for us even when we know that they're not good for us. We're having cake later, by the way. Just that doesn't count. Okay. It's my birthday, so obviously that doesn't count, right? But you see, we do things. So I think we're kind of universal here in our experience. Is there anybody in this room that is not in some way addicted to something? Because you can go now. But, right? And it may be that you're addicted to lying. So just so you know. So what he's saying is we want to get beyond our addiction and up-level that to preference. You see, when I was addicted to having people love me, i.e. codependency, then I wanted to do everything I could so that you would love me. And if it meant being untrue to myself, well, right? And so what we're doing when we're in that place, when my addiction was to having you love me, I need you to love me. And there's nothing more lovable than a needy person, right? Can we, right? Boy, be still my heart. And then I got it, that I couldn't control how you felt. And in fact, it was none of my darn business. My preference is always that people love me. But not everybody loves everything. Some people love bananas and some people don't. Now, if you have a preference for banana, you can have a banana and love it. But if you don't get it, you're okay. So King Keyes is talking about this very simple idea, but it's really this wonderful thing about up-leveling so that our preference is to have what we have, but we're not destroyed if it doesn't happen. What a wonderful place to start to live from, to just say, yes, I'd prefer this, but my happiness is not dependent upon it. See, he goes on to say this. He says, he asks this question, why do we have lives filled with turmoil, desperation, and anxiety? Why are we always pushing ourselves and others? Why do we have only small dribbles of peace, love, and happiness? The answer is so simple, but it is sometimes difficult for us to really understand because almost every way we were taught to work towards happiness only reinforces the feelings and activities that make us unhappy. I know. Can I have an amen? Amen. Thank you. It says this is the central point we must understand. The ways we were taught to be happy cannot possibly work. And unless we see this point clearly, we cannot progress to higher consciousness. So when we're waiting for our prince or princess charming to come along, to awaken us, so that we can live happily ever after, we join the 100% of other people that have tried that program and not had it work. Right? When we think that when the job is manifest, then it's great. When we think whatever the condition is that we're making up that says, now my life can be happy, we're fundamentally wrong. It is an inside job. It is an experience. People, I've lived a lot of places, and I've lived some really beautiful places, and people often will ask me, so what was your favorite place? And I said, you know, what's interesting to me is once I learned that wherever I go, there I am, that my happiness was dependent upon me and not my location, then I loved every place I lived. Every place had its own beauty, every place had its own drawback, but it wasn't about the place that was going to give me the joy. It was about me having an experience of myself, my divine self, living fully wherever I show up. So it's a wonderful thing to begin to realize. I love Ken Key's clarity about this, is that everything we were taught about happiness is fundamentally wrong. And until we start to shift that paradigm and begin to realize that there is an inner quality, an inner strength, an inner way of being, it is that we are spiritual beings. And as spiritual beings, we have inherited all of the qualities of spirit, of love, of joy, of harmony, of peace, of wisdom. All of that is our divine inheritance. Now, we are indeed left alone to make that discovery for ourselves. And it is not emphasized by the world around us. But as we get into this and begin to realize that what Ernest Holmes was saying to us is this. He says, the key then to success and happiness is the conscious control of thought and a continuous radiation of constructive thinking and acting. That's good. That's so good. I'm going to say that again. I need to hear that. The key then to success and happiness is the conscious control of thought and a continuous radiation of constructive thinking and acting. Amen. I'm telling you, we are going to be preaching here soon. I mean, preaching, not just do-rag and everything. I mean, that's going to... Some of you have to be from the tradition to understand. So, right? Holmes is saying that we can learn to consciously control our patterns of thought. Now, we don't control every thought, but over time, as I said, I am not a stranger to depression. I have gone through dark, dark places. So I'm not trying to minimize what that is. But I do know that after years of practice, out of years of realizing the truth of who I am, then there's a different way of approaching reality. And the fundamental essence of that is I am a spiritual being. This is the essence of who I am. I am a spiritual being. I have all of those qualities of spirit as my divine essence. Now, as a spiritual being, I have a body. 57-year-old body today, turns out. I have thoughts. I am a spiritual being that has thoughts. I am a spiritual being that experiences emotions and feelings. I have a physical body, but I am not the body, I am not the thoughts, and I am not the feelings. And when I come to that realization, then I can simply honor the current feeling that I'm having. I no longer have to resist it. You see, we are an over-medicated society. We are an over-addicted society because we have not learned a fundamental lesson that we are just spiritual beings that have experiences. We say, I don't want to feel this way. This is sad. I'll take drugs. Right? I will just numb myself. Right? So often. Now, again, there's a place for everything, but I'm just saying, as a whole, we're so unconditioned to feeling what we feel and to know that this too shall pass. So when we begin to learn this, that we're spiritual beings having experiences, then I can just say, wow, here I am, a spiritual being, feeling angry. Oof. But you see, the anger is not who I am. I don't have to hurt someone for it. I'm just having a feeling. And what I have learned is that as I feel that, it passes, because all emotions pass, don't they? And I realize I can be at a moment of choice. So I have a preference to be happy all the time, but sometimes I feel sad. So I honor that until I'm back to happy again, right? It all comes and goes, but I'm no longer identifying myself as the feeling, as the thought, as the body. I'm just having the spiritual experience in all of those different ways. And it gives me power. So then I can up-level my need to preference. I have a preference for who shows up in my life. I have a preference for what I experience in my life, but I'm not devastated if it doesn't show up according to my plan. You see, the Dalai Lama gave us some great tools. I'm sure you've all read his 18 Rules for Living, which is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So simple, so profound. If you haven't, you can Google it. It's wonderful. But I picked out 3 because I thought they were really good, because I think they're really key to this idea of what is it like to experience happiness. And he says, 1, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. Right? I would even invite you to get really good at failure, like me. Right? Because don't you really screw it up a lot on the way to getting it right? Somebody said in a great talk not too long ago, just fail faster. Right? Rather than make your mistake and spend 3 months in therapy over why you made them, just like, that didn't work. Next, move on. So when you lose, just don't lose the lesson. Second thing, he says, follow the 3 R's. Respect for yourself, respect for others, and responsibility for all of your actions. I know. Can we just have 2? Really? But you see, let's talk about this addictive personality. I've had a few alcoholics in my family, and so I have some familiarity with that whole way of thinking. And one of the things that you notice with addicts, in particular, full-blown, in the depth of it, is it's never their fault. It's the parents, it's the stress, it's the job, it's the thing. I've got to drink, I've got to drug, I've got to do whatever because of everything that's happening out there. So guess what? One of the ways that we move out of the addictive way of being is we accept responsibility fully and completely for our life. I am responsible for the choices I make. Now, if you choose to be a drunk, then go for it. Own it, though. Stop trying to tell your family that it's about them. Right? Am I being too blunt here? It's my birthday. I can do whatever I want. I've decided. So the 3 R's, respect for yourself. Please, learn to love ourselves. Learn to respect ourselves. And then, when we're in a place of respect, we can have a preference for what we have in our life. They made a beautiful cake for me. Some of you saw the last end of it. Beautiful. 2. 2 more. Oh, my God. They must love me. But I prefer not to eat sugar right now, so you guys enjoy. You know, I'm happy. It's all good. I get the wishes. So I'm good. Right? It's just, again, it's so simple, but it's so powerful. If I'm going to be responsible for my life, for my choices, for my preferences, then I get to be empowered. It's so simple. The last idea that I want to share with you is this. Because, we think one of the ways we are misconditioned is to think that when we get what we want, then we'll be happy. But the Dalai Lama, who knows a few things about not getting what he wants and experiencing bliss, says this: remember that not getting what you want is sometimes a wonderful stroke of luck. You see, I had a plan for my life. I did. I'm going to tell you, it didn't include any of you. It had nothing to do with church. It had nothing to do with God. It had nothing to do with selfless service. Trust me. How lucky am I that I didn't get to have the life that I planned and instead found the life that was inside of me that I was called to be. Thank you. Spiritual insight and wisdom helps us to understand that it is not about getting what we want. In fact, Ernest Holmes says it very beautifully. He says, to think that this whole science of mind thing is a get-rich-quick scheme, that you get to have what you want, is to completely misunderstand. You do not get what you want. You get what you can embody. In other words, you get who you become. And so by becoming a more loving person, I get to experience tremendous love in my life. By growing into my own spiritual depth, I get to share that journey. By becoming that thing that I seek to be, I create the environment that those things become welcome in my life. So I agree with the Dalai Lama when he says that, remember that not getting what you want is sometimes a wonderful stroke of luck. I have met people who have asked me to pray with them. And at some point, whenever we come together in prayer, we ask the inevitable question, what is it you want? And so they talk about that. And I always ask, there's the thing, but what's the experience that's behind the thing? If you say you want a new car, what's the experience? If you say you want more money, what's the experience? What does that mean? What does that thing represent? What qualities? Because that's what we want to embody. If we only pray for the things, then they're back next week trying to get rid of the thing that we just manifest. Because they were sure that having this man in their life would make them so darn happy. They get the man, 2 weeks later, they're like, what do we got to do to get rid of this guy? Right? I'm not pointing you out. You can just sit there in anonymity. I'm not going to point you out here. Right? Because until we get the experience that lies behind the thing that we want, we don't get what we want. There's what we want, what we really want. And for me, we all want a greater experience of the divine. Those qualities of joy, of love, of harmony, of abundance, all of those qualities, the good news, let me tell you this, is it's already yours. It is already yours, awaiting our recognition of it and our bringing that forth. So over and over and over, we have this conversation that it's not about changing life out there. It is about changing our own interior life, changing our attitude, changing our thought patterns, allowing that divine essence that wants to thrive through all of creation to be our guiding force, to be our northern star, if you will, that idea that keeps us moving forward. And then we're not dismayed by the conditions of our life. We're not dismayed by the bumps and the hills and the valleys. We're in a place of just knowing that something greater is revealing itself through us, and that as we listen to that divine essence within, we are always guided into our greater good. I wake up with gratitude that my plan never materialized. And instead, I got to have this life, and I am grateful. Let us pray. As we simply take a moment to turn inward, to recognize and realize that there is indeed one presence, one power, one infinite being. And as we breathe into that awareness that there is one life, that life is our life, that life is God, we open our hearts to experience unconditional love. We open our minds to experience divine wisdom. We open the very portal of our soul to recognize, accept, and announce and declare our true inheritance, our true identity. That right here, right now, we are spiritual beings, fully orbed in all of the qualities of spirit. And so we open ourselves. We surrender into that awareness of the grace of the divine pouring itself into existence, longing to know itself more deeply through us. And so as we come together in this recognition, in this moment, I'm simply declaring that which is already so, that we are abundant beings. And as we recognize our oneness with the source of all substance, of all supply, we create a space for greater good to be made realized in our life. I'm simply declaring that which is already so, that we are the creation of love, seeking an experience of itself. And so we allow love to be made manifest in our lives. We're talking here now about the unconditional divine love, that which gives so fully and so freely of itself. We allow ourselves to experience and be transcended by this presence. We find it easy to forgive ourselves and those who we perceived as harmed us. We are willing to let go of that which no longer serves us and to stand fully present, fully orbed in this divine consciousness. I'm knowing that wholeness is the order of the day, that wholeness is a quality of spirit, that which is always in perfect harmony with itself. And because we are created in its image and likeness, wholeness must be our experience. So we call that forth. We allow it to be expressed as health, as well-being, as vitality. How grateful I am for these simple yet profound truths. And so I invite you now, if you are having a burden on your heart, if there's a place in your life that just feels stuck and not working, in this moment, let us be willing to release that, to let it go, to open ourselves to that greater possibility that is indeed seeking its emergence even through this situation. That there is light, there is wholeness, there is love, there is beauty, there is joy. How good it is to recognize this truth. How grateful I am for this inner awareness. How blessed I feel. And so in the Thanksgiving, we extend a blessing. We bless this spiritual community that is indeed thriving, growing, and becoming a brighter light in a world that sometimes appears to be filled with darkness. We are divinely guided and abundantly supplied in our greater good. We extend that blessing to all our brothers and sisters around the planet. We're holding the high vision for a planet at peace, for a world that works for all. We're sensing and feeling the emerging consciousness of oneness, of clarity. It is good. And so, as always, we bless all priests, all rabbis, all ministers, all teachers of every faith. For we know there are many pathways to the divine. We honor and celebrate them all, naming them good. How good it is to stand witness to that which is truth, to be set free. We were told that you shall know the truth, and this truth shall set you free. And so in this moment, we are free to experience our divine inheritance, and it is good. So in joy and gratitude, I'm simply releasing this word into that law that knows what to do, how to do it for the highest good of all concerned. It is with great joy and great gratitude that I release this word, knowing that it is so. As together we say, and so it is.